Ingrid Honkala, PhD, became aware of other life dimensions from her near-death experience at the age of 2 and was gifted with the wise input of beings of light. This helped her face the challenges of growing up in her native Colombia and finding her destiny as a scientist and a giver of light. Her worldwide oceanographic surveys and her love for travel have brought her to 56 countries. She faced deadly war zones, underwater explorations, and spent time at a NASA research center. She learned any human experience can be illuminated from within.
Hi everyone, it's such a blessing to be here with you today. So I want to share with you today that my path of awareness, my path of awakening started when I was very, very young. I was only 2 years old when I had a near-death experience that actually changed the course of my entire life. Okay. Oh, it's me? Oh, good. Let's see if I'm going to make it work. Okay. So all this happened in Bogota, Colombia, where I was born. And back in the day, both of my parents worked, and they left us at the care of a maid who lived with us in the house. She was a lady that really didn't pay much attention to us when my parents were not around. So early one morning when my parents went to work, my oldest sister, who was almost 4 and I was almost 3, decided that we wanted to go play in the back of the house in a patio. And as soon as my parents left, the lady just went back to her room and started just to listen to operas. So we realized, oh, nobody's watching. We went to the patio, and in the patio, we found a ball and decided, oh, we want to play catch across a tank. And in the corner of the patio, there was a tank filled with 900 gallons of frigid water. And the purpose of this tank was to collect water to hand wash clothes. So next to the tank, there was a flat surface for scrubbing. So we were little, we grabbed stools, climbed the tank. My sister sat on the flat surface next to the tank. So she was a little bit safer than I was. I went on the other side, and I was like sitting at the edge of the tank, leaning very, very precariously there. But hey, at 2, what can happen? You're just there to have fun. So my sister grabbed a ball, and she threw the ball at me, and she didn't apply enough force. And then the ball fell in the water, and I leaned forward in an attempt to grab it, because I thought it was close enough. And when I went to grab it, it rolled on the surface of the water. And I lost my balance and fell. At that age, I didn't know that if you fall into water, you drown. So I experienced the most terrorizing moment of my life when I realized I could not breathe. And when I was experiencing this state of absolute horror, I went from this in just a blink to experience a state of absolute serenity and peace and absolute silence. I didn't know what happened, but I was just experiencing absolute well-being. And then I saw light that appeared in my watery surrounding. And then I saw bubbles suspended in the water surrounded by light. And it was by chasing these bubbles that I just turned around and saw a body suspended in the water. And right there, I knew that that was my body. And I wasn't surprised about this. And because I was born as a very sick child, and I spent the first 3 years of my life feeling unwell, when I saw the body there and I was experiencing this well-being, I was like, I'm not going back there. So at that moment, I also had the awareness that I could choose not to go back to the body. And then I turned around and left. And when I left, in just a blink, I appeared in the maid's room, and I was looking at her from above. And she was lying on the bed, listening to soap operas, completely unaware of what was happening to me. And then, in just a blink again, I appeared in my mom's path. And my mom was about 10 minutes away from home. At the time, she didn't have a car, so she had to walk. And when I saw my mom again from above, I was like, oh, that's Mom. And guys, at that precise moment, my mom stopped. She didn't hesitate, she didn't move forward, and she knew that something was happening at home with one of her babies. And she turned around and started to run back home. And at that moment, I saw her, but I just got distracted by the realization that wherever I put my mind, I could go. It was like time and space had vanished for me, and I could be anywhere at any time. And it was then, when again, in just a blink, I appeared in a realm that was made of pure, bright, shiny light. And it was the first time in my 3 years of life that I felt that I was home. And although I had seen my body in the water, up to this point, I didn't have the realization that I was not Ingrid. And then it was when I realized this, and I realized myself as a being of light. And then I started to dissolve with the whole and experience the state of oneness. And then this went even farther, because I actually completely dissolved and experienced what I can call as the state of non-self, or the state of nothingness. There's no words to describe what nothing means, because the moment you give a description, then it's something. So the only thing I could say is that state where there's no movement, no color, no meaning, no concept, no form, no definition. Is the state, the only thing I could say is this is a state of absolute presence and pure consciousness. And from there, while I was experiencing this state of absolute well-being, my mom actually arrived home. And she knew, although we live in a big house, she knew exactly where to go. And she directed herself to the back of the house. And in the patio, there was still my sister. And she was there pointing at the tank and telling my mom, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her. My mom went in the tank, and incredibly, she was trained CPR because she worked with children. So she got me out of the tank, and there was no pulse, there was no breathing. My mom did what she knew to do to revive me, and at that point, I was completely disconnected from this reality. And then, again, like everything in this experience, in just a second, I felt that I had jumped from the tallest building in the world, and that I was being sucked back, pulled back into this body, in this reality, and there's nothing I could do to stop it. So let me tell you, I was not a happy child. When I came back with an awareness I did not have before. And because I experienced the state of oneness, when I would look at my parents, I had the realization that they were not my parents. They were my equal. And when I saw myself, I realized I am not this baby. How is this possible? So I couldn't relate with other children. Imagine I was just this little child, and I would look at myself in the mirror and scream and tell my mom, you don't understand, this is not me. This is not my name, and I should not be here. And this was a really hard time in my life. And because I also came with skills that I did not have before. Right after my near-death experience, I could read and write. I could resolve mathematical problems. I could put together complex puzzles. So I was the child that was not understood by anybody. What is going on with this child? And by then, it was the early 70s. My parents were very young. There was not any knowledge in Colombia about near-death experience of none of this. So I felt very alone. So while I was experiencing so much, this touched the realm of trauma. My parents really did what they could to deal with the situation because at the time, Colombia was a country at war. My parents were too young, and okay, let's deal however we can with this situation. But incredibly, the help that we need comes. And for me, it came in the most remarkable way. And what happened is that right after my near-death experience, I started to have what we know today as out-of-body experiences. And I kept experiencing that realm of the light that I experienced when I died. And every time I went to these journeys, I felt so well. And in one of these journeys, one day, I was surrounded by starlight figures that were shining in all different colors. And in another journey, one of these figures that was shining in pure gold shaped itself into a human form. And it approached me and touched me. And I said, wow, you are a being of light. And after that, they started to appear also in this physical realm. And although they didn't say or do anything, I started to feel so well in their presence that I started to heal and talk to everybody and just start being more like part of the family and my surroundings. But this was just still very hard for me because I really didn't know why all this was happening to me. So it's when I asked the beings of light, and I said, why this is happening to me? And the answer was amazing because they said, because you are special, and you are beginning to know it. And I said, what do you mean when you say that I am special? And they said, everyone is special, but not everybody knows it yet. And although I was feeling better and I was like feeling healthier and everything, I was still throwing tantrums. Because at the time, I didn't know that what was really happening to me. And every time somebody called my name, because I didn't identify myself with my name, people will call me Ingrid, and I say, don't call me like that. That is not my name. And it's when the beings of light, when they started to bring me to understand what was happening to me, and they said, it is going to take time for anyone around you to understand. And I said, to understand what? And they said, to understand that in the realm of the light, names are not needed, as you already know. So for me, it was like, oh, I know now I am not crazy. I know now why I don't need a name. But they said that for now, it was best for me to remain quiet because no one was going to really understand. And I would just think, what is not to understand? That was the reality that I was living, and it was so clear to me. But in Colombia, there was not open mind about any of these. Colombia was 98% Catholic at the time. They was not open to any of these concepts. So I started to have to go through life understanding that there was no one I could actually at the time talk much about. But then they also said there will be people put in your path to guide you and to help you. And they were right. One of the first people that was there to guide me and help me was my mom. When I was 5 years old, she realized that I actually could see things like auras and beings of light. And she revealed to me that she could see spirits as well. By the age of 6, I was also seeing spirits. And by the age of 8, my grandmother, who was seeking for other spiritual paths, taught me meditation. And by the age of 12, she took me to the first Buddhist temple where I learned a breathing technique. And then later on, I realized that I have been access to visions. I've been having visions of the future since I was 4. By 19, I had access to past life experiences. And by this age, I was also being able to communicate with plants and animals. So knowing that I had all these gifts was actually incredible, but also was a burden. I knew I could use these gifts, and I was doing it to help people around me, starting with my family. But at the same time, I felt it's when I realized I'm not like anyone I know. I was so different from everybody else, and I started to compare myself with others and say, I'm not like anyone, and I don't want to be this way. So it's when I rejected my gifts, and I was actually given the choice to continue in like being a teacher, to continue in the path of the light, and I said, no, I don't want it. I wanted to be like everyone else. I didn't want to accept these gifts. So for the next, I was 19 years old when I was given the possibility to choose. And for the next 20 years, I had a lot of sufferings, especially because I always asked, why me? Why this is happening to me? And when I was 39, I had what I call a big awakening. So I had an experience in which everything dissolved. And I experienced the same state of nothingness that I experienced during my near-death experience, but this time in a state of awareness. And I had reached the point of so much depression that was the point in which that shell was cracked. And the why me question was answered by something really simple and amazing. Why not? And it's when the switch came on, and it was the first time in my life that I put myself at the level of the cause and not at the level of the effect. And it's when I understood that all my challenges and sufferings and pains were actually gifts given to me to awaken. Everything that had happened didn't happen to me, happened for me. So it's when actually what we call forgiveness happened for me in a remarkable way, because I realized I don't have anything to forgive. Because all this has been given for my own awakening. And then from there, when I had this big awakening, there was 2 questions that I've been asking for a very long time since I was very young. And one of the questions was, when did we stop being one with the whole? And how is it even possible to forget who we truly are? And the answer was incredible, because it was one never stopped being one. One never left the source. One just became distracted and seemingly forgot. And at that moment is when I started to actually align and go back to my inner wisdom. And it's when I started to realize I am that source of everything. And then I started to see purpose behind everything. And it's when the beings of light said to me, nothing in the universe lacks purpose. And it's when I actually start asking the right questions. And one of the questions was, why my near-death experience happened when I was so young? And the answer was, because you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet. So this was amazing. Yeah, I was young enough to be pure and innocent, but old enough to never forget who I truly was at the core of my being. Another thing I asked, what was the purpose of my near-death experience? And now I had the way to understand it. It all happened for me to bring the message of connection. If you think about, that's the reason why I met the maid and I met my mom. Although when I saw my body suspended in the water, I thought, I'm not going back to it. That was not the universal plan. The reason I went to meet these two people is because I was going to come back. I was asking for help. But I said, why didn't I just go to see my mom directly? Oh, because I needed the contrast. What happened with the maid? No connection. Although she was closer to where I was drowning, she could not feel me. But my mom, unconditional love, absolute connection, to the point that she could feel me and she could sense me. From there, I also understood the purpose of our uniqueness, what I didn't want to accept. I realized that each one of us is a unique piece in the universal puzzle. Each one of us is a unique thread in the plan of the universe. I put the example of the fingers and the hand. All the fingers are different, but all of them need to work together to be whole. If you cut this finger off, it cannot do anything. So it's the uniqueness that encompasses oneness, wholeness. The beings of light also said to me, the only way to go back to alignment, the only way to go back to the root of who you are is to know thyself. To go back to the I am that I am, that presence, that divine being, that light. Each one of us can be that light in the path of each other. Each one of us can be the light in the awakening of hundreds and thousands more. Just like Robin was saying today, is our choice. Each one of us can be that peace, that light, that awareness. So today I would say to each one of us, you and you and you and you and me can be that light. I would say that our uniqueness and our awareness are the keys to freedom. And I invite, again, each one of you, with your divine uniqueness, to be the light of loving awareness. Thank you.